So that's for Lagos State. But let's zoom out, so to speak, and take a look at this nationally. Recently, the Presidential Steering Committee announced plans for a mass vaccination campaign. But there are questions as to what shape this campaign will take. I mean, we're said to have 12 million vaccines in stock. Close to 6 million Nigerians have taken the jab so far, but the target is 111 million people. That's about half of the population. And now that the festive season is upon us, what goal is realistic and how do we communicate that to people to get their buy-in? Well, Dr. Mukhtar is the National Incident Manager and Presidential Steering Committee on COVID-19, and he joins us from our Abuja studio. Dr. Mohammed, thank you for joining us on the program. Let me just start off quickly. What more can you tell us about this planned mass vaccination campaign? I mean, what shape is it going to take, and how is it different from the current campaigns we have seen across board?
Thank you, Kayode. Good evening. As you mentioned, certainly the federal government is embarking on a mass campaign program to ensure that as many people get vaccinated as possible. In the past, we've had scarcity of vaccines. We did not have enough. We're scrambling to get a few doses from here and there to vaccinate our population. Currently now, we have enough vaccines in the country. There is no scarcity in any of the states. And therefore, the challenge is to push out these vaccines to make sure as many Nigerians get vaccinated as possible. This is a very critical time for us. This is November. Very soon, people will start traveling back to the country. And as you heard from the Lagos State Commissioner, all the waves have coincided with periods of peak travel. And therefore, we are preparing and we are prepping up, to curtail any importation that we are going to have with its consequences. Certainly, the plan now by the Nigeria National Primary Healthcare Development Agency is to intensify the vaccination activities among public health facilities, private health facilities, and also provide, on-the-spot vaccination at specific locations. But the plan is not going to be done maybe everywhere across the country at once. We're zeroing in on specific high-risk states. If you look at Lagos, FCT, Ogun, Oyo State, Kaduna, Plateau, these are the states that have previously, shown very high predisposition to having more infections than others. And therefore, it is going to be stepwise. You are aware of the mandate that has been given by the federal government regarding federal health workers and federal government offices in the country. There is no going back in that one. This is not a punitive measure, but it is a step, to make sure that our workplaces become safe, to ensure that people are protected when they come to the workplace, and also to encourage other Nigerians who are maybe in the private sector or the non-organized sector to also recognize that the federal government is taking this seriously and has imposed this mandate on the public servants. So it's going to start now, or it has already started. And the target, as you mentioned, yes, it's a very ambitious target, but we'll try as much as possible as we can to make sure that we cover some ground.
Interestingly, we had this conversation with a public health physician a few days ago on the program. And, the question was put as to what kind of approach should be taken. Is it persuasion, appeal, or coercion? And he was of the opinion that coercion might be extreme, that at this point, it's important to encourage people, to, on their own volition, go ahead and take these vaccines. So I wonder how the government is approaching this. You've said this is not a punitive measure, but clearly it says that if people are not vaccinated, they will not be allowed into, federal government agencies, departments, and the rest. So how are you mixing persuasion, appeal, and coercion in all of this, really?
So if you look at it, it is actually a phased approach, and it's a combination of all of this. Prior to the December 1 mandate that was given by federal government, we've been mounting intensive campaigns, engagement, and persuasion, as you'll call it, through every available medium to get the public to accept these vaccines. Now we have started, the enforcement side, which is government looking at its own public places to make them safe. And even this one, it is not that you don't have an option. There is an option, but it's a matter of, what are the stakes, for that option. If you are not vaccinated, you can still have access to government premises as long as you have done a COVID test that is not more than 72 hours. So you have that option. Continue to do a PCR test every 3 days before you access a government facility, or just go and get your vaccine. I think we don't need to really overbeat this point in the sense that we're talking about public health. We're talking about the greater good of the people, the greater good of the country. We have seen what is going on currently now in Europe and many parts of the world. As the winter, becomes more intense, there are more infections that are going on. And most of these infections now are among the unvaccinated population. They are the ones that get sick. They are the ones that get hospitalized. And mostly they are the ones that die from COVID. Recently, even in this country, we have seen the data. Over 80% of all the cases that have died recently in the country are people who are not vaccinated. So it makes sense. And it is the responsibility of government to ensure that we secure the lives and property of the people. And what is common good for everyone, government would always ensure that it happens so that we protect the majority of the people in the country.
So looking at the goal and then looking at where we are right now, 111 million, we're still at about 6 million people who have taken the jab so far. And I mean, just a little percentage of that 111 million are federal civil servants. So I wonder, for the larger population, or at least for the people left in that 111 million target, will there be some sort of enforcement as well to ensure that they are captured? I wonder what the game plan is for them.
So, it's a dynamic process. And like I told you, this is just the beginning. And government is trying to set example. Certainly, you have heard some of the states have already taken similar actions. So you will now add state public health services. The state governors are also going to make some proclamation very soon, requesting that their own civil servants also get vaccinated. We are aware that the private sector has already started doing this. Most of the multinational corporations are also enforcing it. And therefore, it is a stepwise process. This is not something that will say that we have a grand plan to say that everybody must be vaccinated at once. We move, we look at the gains, and then we move to the next step and get people. Certainly, in a not very far future, people will not be able to travel out of the country if you don't have vaccine. So for this category of people, their drive to get vaccination, will be because they want to travel. And when you see others get vaccinated, then you also get kind of motivated. And I'm sure very soon, Coyote, public events also, will try to scrutinize, because everybody wants to be safe. Everybody wants to make sure that they do not constitute risk to others. And we'll start seeing this, and it will improve our coverage generally. The target is really to be able to achieve 70 to 80% vaccination coverage so that we can lower down our restrictions. People can be free, to go to most public places without the fear, of getting the risk of having a COVID infection.
Well, to be clear, anyway, vaccination is still ongoing across the country, but without some challenges. And of course, it's not as fast as you would, desire. Some centers have reported not having doses at all. Some others have, but it's a different brand. And that brings me to the next question. Is it right to offer a different second dose, or ask recipients who have taken maybe one dose of AstraZeneca, for example, to then take or begin the process again with a different vaccine? We've had reports of that, and some call it vaccine cocktail. What's the position on that one?
So, as you are aware, these vaccines are new, but we have data from other countries of people who have taken different brands of vaccine. And the consensus among the scientific community is that even doing different vaccines actually confers higher level of immunity than just doing a single vaccine. Most of the people who have had 2 doses of a particular vaccine, will have a booster from another brand of the vaccine. And that creates, better immunity, the body to recognize even the different variants, and so on and so forth. But for now, the challenge for us in Nigeria is not even talking about booster doses or having cocktail of vaccines, but the ones that are available, the 2 doses, of the basic vaccines are the ones that we want people to take. But certainly, there will be a time. We're also conducting a study currently in the country just to monitor, the antibody levels of people who have been vaccinated and to determine what will be the appropriate time when you will need an additional booster dose. But for now, our preoccupation is to get people to get vaccinated, with the basic vaccines that are available in the country.
So we're winding down in a minute, Dr. Mohammed, and let's just leave it on this note. What's the plan for the festive season? People are already making plans to travel both within and from outside the country. They will converge in large gatherings, and I'm just thinking, how is the PSC approaching this?
We are quite apprehensive. We know that we are quite vulnerable. Considering the level of vaccination in this country. We've not vaccinated more than 3% of our population. We know that our hospitals are in a very not very good conditions. They can easily be overwhelmed. We know that the healthcare system generally, in the country is weak, and therefore any large amount of infections or different variants that come into this country will really constitute a great risk to our health system. And therefore, we are taking very serious steps. For now, we do not have any country in the restricted list, for travel from Nigeria. But we are going to review that, reviewing also what is going on globally, identifying where the infections are likely to come from, and institute measures that are necessary in our points of entry to ensure that new infections will minimize the number of new infections that are going to come in, and to make sure that we detect variants that are of concern as early as possible so that we can mitigate and contain their spread in the country.
Well, that's the goal, definitely. I'd like to thank you so much, Dr. Mukhtar Mohammed, the National Incident Manager, Presidential Steering Committee on COVID-19. Thank you so much for sharing your thoughts with us on the program.
Thank you, Kayode. It's a pleasure.